I was coming off a season-ending injury, so I could have a rough junior year. However, even at 5'5", NFL scouts were looking at me, which made it more important than ever that I was at the top of my game. Not only did I want to make it to the NFL, but I wanted to win a Big Ten championship, a national championship, and every award I could possibly get. If I played the way I was at the end of last season, I felt like I could achieve all of my goals, and my first game of the year was against number 3 Oregon. I still hadn't made a catch by the end of the first half, until I finally got fed the ball. I broke a tackle and used my top end speed to take it all the way down inside the Oregon 30-yard line, which got us in a position to finish the second quarter up 11. But I can't lie, we started to fall apart in the second half with turnover after turnover, so I needed to bounce back and make sure my team was in a good position to win the game. We ended the quarter going up 7, and a few minutes later I got absolutely obliterated on this play, which put me out for the rest of the game. Luckily, we ended up beating the Ducks in a close battle, and I wanted to level up throughout the season because that would give me the flexibility to call some plays throughout the year. My team started off down 7 when I traveled to play at Western Michigan, and Steve Merck and I weren't hooking up well today at all. It was honestly shocking how much our chemistry had fallen off, but we finally connected midway through the second quarter, and from there, we would start to really move the ball. I felt like I was getting back into a consistent rhythm, but we were still down by 8. In the third quarter, we failed to tie up the game. However, you could tell there was a massive shift in momentum until Steve Merck tried to hit me in the back of the end zone, and instead he underthrew it, turning it over. And on our next possession, we just weren't on the same page, so once again, he threw another interception. How was I supposed to reach my season goals with us playing like this? It wasn't looking good until I got into the end zone for the first time this season. And even though we didn't get the 2-point conversion, we had the ball with 45 seconds left in the game. And then Steve Merck and I made a much needed play, getting us all the way down to the other side of the field. So I got to watch from the sidelines as our kicker nailed the winner, and we escaped the huge upset. I deserved to be the player of the game, and I was looking to put up a crazy stat line when we hosted Central Michigan. I ended the first quarter by burning the cornerback on my side and finishing the play with a legendary dive. Then I caught another touchdown a few minutes later, and it was clear to me that we were going to cruise to another win. I felt like I had put on a good performance, and I was now considered a veteran starter. We were sitting at number 15 in the polls, but I was far behind in the receiving yards race. This road game at Utah State would not be easy, but I was trying to break multiple school career records, and that would mean that I would need to go for over 150 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. I'd make my first end zone grab at the beginning of the second quarter, and I continued to dominate the Utah State defense while making defenders look silly. Still, I only had 55 receiving yards, but instead of racking up more, I had to make a clutch tackle to stop Utah State from a huge defensive turnaround. And then in the third quarter, after Steve Merca threw an interception, we found ourselves in a tie game until this touchdown. And even though it was clear we would avoid the loss, I didn't end up breaking a single school record. I had my first Big Ten game of the year at Nebraska, and I started the second quarter with a touchdown grab. Steve Merca was a perfect 13 for 13 after he hit me in the end zone, and he was playing on a whole other level today as he kept feeding me the ball. We would end up getting by the Cornhuskers and improving to 5-0. It was clear that we were a run-first team, so my touches were very limited this year. I wanted to give the kids that were watching from the hospital an amazing performance today because I knew they weren't used to seeing a good offense, and if I wanted to actually win the Heisman, I would really need to step up my game. I hadn't had a bad season so far, but I certainly wasn't on pace to match my stats from last year, and the good thing was I already had 2 touchdowns before the end of the first quarter. On one of the last plays of the half, I snuck by the defense for my 3rd score of the day, but surprisingly, it was a very close game. So with less than 2 minutes left, we had to go down the field on the Hawkeyes and figure out how to break the tie. I continued to help us move the ball by finding all the open spots in the defense, which led to us getting into the end zone here and leaving Iowa with another win. I felt like my performance should have gotten me some attention, but I still wasn't getting onto the Heisman watch list. So if I wanted to win any awards this year, I would need to continue to play at the top of my game. And I was off to a hot start against Illinois. But that wouldn't continue as I'd make a bad call for the ball, which led to Steve Merca turning it over. I needed to redeem myself after that, so thankfully, Steve Merca saw me streaking down the field wide open for a 40-yard gain. And then he would find me again on this corner route that would get our team inside the 5-yard line. Even though I kept getting open while making big plays, I was getting tackled short of the end zone every time, and then when I had a chance for touchdowns, I couldn't get it done. So my stats weren't going to be as good, but at least I was being a team player, making blocks that would lead to scores. I was a little jealous of Jordan Wright's touches because he was ruining the chance I had to be great. which was hurting my Heisman odds as well. Hopefully, a tunnel fight wouldn't happen again, but I wasn't promising anything. I wouldn't be opposed to jumping JJ McCarthy if we couldn't pull off this rivalry win, and you could tell there was a lot of hate with deadly hits like this. But that wouldn't stop me from scoring a couple of plays later. It just meant way too much to me to lose to Michigan after last year, so I was doing everything I could to put us on top. And honestly, the Wolverines weren't doing a very good job at stopping me. I was already well over 100 receiving yards just midway through the second quarter, but by the third, we weren't scoring and we found ourselves down by 10. Thankfully, we got within one possession, so we weren't completely out of it. And with 3 minutes left, we were able to tie it up. But right after, Michigan went down and scored, so I had to respond back. And that's when I made the miracle play, taking it 75 yards to the house untouched. Again though, our defense stunk, so we needed to get back on the board in less than a minute. And I did it once again, making a huge play for my team and getting into the end zone with just 22 seconds left, which even led to me breaking my own school record. In overtime, if we scored a touchdown on this possession, we would survive, and I made that game-winning catch. There wasn't anything that felt better than this. We took home the rivalry trophy, and I was the only reason that we did. But I still didn't get onto the Heisman watch list, so I needed to go out and dominate the following week on the road. I started off with a touchdown against Northwestern, but that was the only catch I'd make the rest of the half until this play, and that led to us going up by 4. I felt like we should have had a better lead on Northwestern because, let's be honest, since we are ranked as the 4th best team in the country, we need to dominate games like this. And that's where I came into play, making my second touchdown grab of the day, and in the 4th quarter, I fought my hardest to get the ball across the goal line for another score. Once again, I had dominated, and there were only 3 games left in the season. We had to win this one against Minnesota, but Steve Merca started it off by turning the ball over, so I needed to get us back into it. And this touchdown grab would give us a 4-point lead going into the half. Even after making this catch and move on the play, I was having my worst game yet. It was the end of the 3rd quarter, and I had less than 50 receiving yards. So fortunately, I got into the back of the end zone at the start of the 4th, and then I made this catch for my 3rd touchdown. So I somehow finished as the player of the game. There were still 7 undefeated teams left by week 12, and we were tied for our division. This was the best possible start we could have had against number 13 Ohio State, as I took one of our first plays 77 yards around their defense and into the back of the end zone in front of our home crowd. And this was going to be my Heisman performance, as I wasn't dropping the ball. I'm not quite sure how I did it, but somehow I continued to beat their defense over the top, and that led to another 50 receiving yards. By midway through the 3rd quarter, it was a tie game at 10, and after we went down by 7, I had to make sure I took over. It was hard trying to single-handedly carry a team to an undefeated season, but this laser from Steve Merca to me would help us tie up the game. However, with 33 seconds left on 4th down, I failed to make this catch against the Buckeyes, so even though I played one of my best games yet, we lost for the first time this year. And since we weren't playing Penn State at all for some reason, my only goal was to end the season by getting drafted into the NFL. And I felt like if I could go for over 200 yards today, I'd still have a shot at winning the Heisman. I was racking up the receiving yards, getting to almost 100 before the half, but for some reason, I never got the ball after that. So I finished the year with a very average game, and even though I should be happy that we went 11-1, we weren't going to make the college football playoffs, we missed out on the Big Ten championship, and I never even got close to the Heisman. On the bright side, I won the Biletnikoff, and I had to decide if I was going to declare for the draft or come back for my senior year. But before I made that decision, I had to play in the Rose Bowl against Utah. And this was my last chance to shoot up the draft boards if I were to declare early. I set another school record for receptions in a season, but after that, I got locked up for quite a few possessions. And we ended the 1st quarter tied at 0. Unfortunately, I still wasn't able to hold onto the ball in the 2nd, and since I'm only 5'5", I'm not even sure an NFL team would take a chance on me, especially with my team playing this terribly and with me failing to catch my 5th target in a row. However, even if we didn't score on the last play of the half, I got a little of my confidence back with this 32-yard snag. And with us being down by 21 at Utah, at this point, we had nothing to lose. If you thought that meant we'd come back, you're wrong because Steve Merca had some other ideas. The odds of him making the NFL were looking slim, but then I boosted his stats by making this catch and taking it 70 yards to the house, finally getting my team on the board. But in the end, we just weren't able to move the ball enough to win, and I was not happy about it. Even though I finished with a wild stat line, we got completely embarrassed in the Rose Bowl, and that alone made me want to get out of Michigan State immediately. I could stay here, I could grad transfer, or I could declare for the draft, and in the end, I decided that you're going to want to make sure you're subscribed because I'll be making my decision Friday, November 11th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time.